Hello and welcome to Movies and Tea. I'm your host always, Elwood Jones, and joining me of course is my co-host, Miss Kim Lowe.
Hello.
Tonight we continue our look at the filmography of Hayao Miyazaki, the head of Studio Ghibli, as we tonight look at probably one of the best known films in the Studio Ghibli back catalogue, and that is Spirited Away from 2001, the 12th animated film to be written and directed by Miyazaki and put out by Studio Ghibli. The film itself follows a 10-year-old girl named Chihiro who wanders into the worlds of spirits and ends up being forced to work at a bathhouse when her parents are turned into pigs by the witch Yubaba. This is a film which also really, if Studio Ghibli wasn't already on the map already for a lot of animation fans, then it was certainly after this film that it really brought it to the forefront. Not only Studio Ghibli's work, but Japanese animation as a whole, as a lot of people had come to think of Japanese animation as being just a lot of demons and schoolgirls and giant robots, and a lot of the more action-focused titles that had been brought across to the West. And with this film, it really proved that there was a lot more to anime than many critics have certainly given it credit for. The film going on to hold the record of Best Animated Feature, only being recently beaten by Demon Slayer, the movie Mugen Train in 2020. But Kim, when it came to Spirited Away, what was your sort of feelings on this one? Because you were already an established fan of Studio Ghibli at this point.
Well, yeah, I mean, Spirited Away. I didn't watch Spirited Away when it first got all the nominations and stuff. I think I only watched it afterwards. I'd even argue that I probably had stopped watching Studio Ghibli for a while at that point. I was still stuck in a lot of the classics. But, I mean, Spirited Away is such a brilliant little film. I mean, it's one of the ones that I watch and rewatch the most since I've seen it. At least one of the newer ones as well that, you know, that I think are held pretty, like, that I hold pretty high in my mind.
Okay. Well, the film itself was made to please the 10-year-old daughter of Hayao Miyazaki's personal friend and director in his own right, Seiji Okuda. And Okuda's daughter even became the model for the character of Chihiro. And it was during the film's sort of planning phase that Miyazaki gathered the daughters of the Ghibli staff in a mountain hut and held a training seminar. And it was this experience that really led to him to want to make a film for them, especially since he'd never made a movie for girls at the age 10. And it could obviously be argued when you look at the films such as like My Neighbor Totoro, which also features young female characters, but obviously with this one we have a younger female characters front and center in a very sort of fantastical world. And I think for many, Spirited Away proved like the perfect starting point, and especially with the Ghibli movies, and really for many sort of like led them into this obsession, because they would watch like Spirited Away and then they'd discover like My Neighbor Totoro, often going straight into like Howl's Moving Castle, which closely followed this one by. So it's unsurprising that this is like created, really put Studio Ghibli on the map, and certainly when it came to the Oscars, I mean, this is the first anime film to ever win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, and a lot of this also is down to John Lasseter, who is one of the founding fathers of Pixar, who really went out of his way to sort of promote the film in North America, and as a result of this ended up becoming the executive producer of the English dub. But Kim, what is it about Spirited Away that you like? Where's the appeal, really?
I mean, I think it's nice because it keeps the like the colorfulness of the whole thing, and it's just the story itself is so fun to watch. Just, you see some girl who's going to, it's almost like, I mean, you can talk about it. I think it's already been compared to, like Alice in Wonderland or like Wizard of Oz or something, like a girl being swept into kind of like a fantasy realm. And then this one is kind of more of a spiritual realm. And I like the whole balance of everything. You have a good amount of comedy, but at the same time, it's a really fun adventure that she has. and she meets a lot of like interesting characters along the way. Along with obviously, you know, like the witchcrafts, and that switches them into, you know, like little the some of the characters get switched into little versions of little creatures and insects and stuff like that. And it's so cute that way. You know, you see all of this creativity that's in not only even all the different spirits that you see, and just every little detail of everyone that has to be in that bathhouse that she works in, or there's so much detail to everything that's put into it that I feel like even this time as I'm rewatching it, I'm starting to notice a lot of things. Obviously, when we rewatch things for the show, it's, you know, for the show we notice a lot of different, you know, I start noticing more of the themes that we talk about just because it's you know, it's related to Miyazaki himself and his vision for what he's creating.
Oh, certainly when it comes to Miyazaki's things, I think a lot of them are very clearly on display here, such as his love of the environment in particular is takes the embodiment this time in the sludge spirit, which we see a bicycle being pulled out of when they clean it up, which is also a nod to when he was taking part in a river cleaning. They pulled a bicycle out of the river, and that inspired him to that whole sequence with the sludge spirit. We also get to see young girls cleaning things, as is the case when she's put to work in the bathhouse. And we also get flying sequences as well, involving dragons. And it's just the thing I like about Spirited Away is that we've seen many locations which are like inhabited by spirits, and we've certainly seen this in the previous films. So when you look at Mononoke's The Woods, have got the forest spirits. Same with My Neighbor Totoro. There's always these locations characters go where spirits linger, but with Spirited Away, you have a resort where spirits travel to, which I thought was such a novel idea. It's like we always think of like we go to like a place and the spirits are already living there, but here we have an actual place the spirits come to because, you know, they like to chill out and vacation like the rest of us. And when night falls, you see this location that when it's first introduced, it's like those abandoned theme park videos you see when they sing like the drone cam in, and it's like all these empty stalls and stuff, but it's like night falls and you see everything, all the lights come on and everything sort of like comes to life as the spirits start to arrive. And certainly at the center of this, you've got this huge towering bathhouse, which is owned by Yubaba, and that itself is this sort of location that the film has as this great central point, but once we leave that location, the film never quite manages to capture the same sort of magic that we have during that first half, where she's obviously working at the bathhouse and we're seeing all the different levels of the bathhouse. I think that was really, for myself, is when the film's at its strongest, really. And then, yeah, you know, I mean, you can also say that it's got that nod to Pinocchio because her parents get turned into pigs, so...
I mean, I think that's one of the things. Is not only is it that, but I think it's also the fact of maybe disrespecting your surroundings, or maybe even just feeling a little bit like the changing into pigs feels like it's like a consequence of trespassing. And I kind of like that. It feels like these characters are a little bit more, especially like when they're in the, you know, Chihiro and her parents. While it's obviously it feels like a Japanese surrounding for sure, they have kind of more of this, I don't know, maybe it feels a little bit more westernized. The feeling that they have of these people going in and kind of thing. I don't know. It feels a little, it's like, I was thinking about it and I was like, you know, Miyazaki films kind of all have this kind of link to each other. And much like Neighbor Totoro, this is also someone moving somewhere else, like a family moving somewhere else. And in this case, it's like, yeah, if Totoro wasn't, like the Totoro didn't get to, you know, they took a side path and they drove off somewhere else. And you have and you also have the comparison, right? Back then it was like, you know, they had all this moving stuff and whatnot. That was like back in the 1980s. And then now in this one, they don't have to worry about all their stuff. So they have that liberty. All the move, they're just having to get there to meet the movers. So it's already more updated moving film. And then they sidetrack into this new area. And then there's also this kind of spiritual realm and a bunch of spirits that live there as well. And I kind of like to me, maybe I'm overthinking it, but I kind of like that parallel a lot. Like, you have a modernized version of kind of like about a family who moves, and in this one it's a lot more exciting because, you know, you're meeting, like, she's literally in a world where she loses her name, and then you have to, the whole story behind it is so captivating because she loses her name and then she has to try to not forget it, and at the same time help Haku remember who he is at the same time to release him. So there's so much in this that, you know, she's such a pivotal point, but at the same time she almost feels like she feels so helpless when she gets there, but she becomes such a key element to changing the dynamic of who the people there, the spirits there.
There's so many sort of like elements here where the film's obviously, as you mentioned already, you've got the modern world and the old world are sort of like meeting head on here. And I think when you look at the spirit world, it's got a lot of the traditional Japanese sort of belief system still in place. It's the idea of like public bathing and the fact that, I mean, when we look at the bathhouse, I mean, it's actually based on like one of the oldest bathhouses in Japan's, which is a Dogo Onsen in Matsumura, and this has even got like baths that are reserved for members of the Japanese royal family. It's that old. And there's this sort of like elements of like tradition and the way that a lot of these characters sort of like dress and hold themselves that just very sort of fit in with like that meeting with this idea of like you got the modern world clashing with this old world, and she's sort of like being forced to take note of these very sort of traditional sort of beliefs and that she has to like obey in. I think there's something about bathhouses that always sort of like fascinate me. I think it's just because we don't obviously have bathhouses in the UK. We're not very big on like public bathing. So the idea whenever you see like bathhouses, be it in, you know, in anime or you see it in like a lot of Yakuza movies and stuff, it's got this real sort of like mystique to it. So to have a spirit bathhouse and then you cram it full of like really interesting looking spirits, like those ones that look like ducks.
Yeah.
You see, and everyone's favorite, the radish spirit, which is basically an elephant in a thong. It just and we throw into this like all these other little sort of like key characters, such as Kamaji, who's the spider-like engineer who like works down the basement. And it's so, when we've obviously going through the filmography like that we have, it's so hard not to like look at him and then say, oh look, there's the engineer from Castle in the Sky.
Yeah.
How they basically just like reworked his sort of character, and then we get to the soot sprites, and it's like, I remember you guys from Totoro.
Yeah.
But here
they're slaves.
They're not slaves as such. They're just there to move the coal. It's like
they're there
job.
to move the coal, but that's the thing, is if they lose their purpose, they be turned back into normal soot. So it's kind of like they have to. I think, you know, in a way, it's a really nice message, because it's kind of like, you know, you get this in exchange for, you know, being, you know, alive in a certain way, right?
Yeah. And when we look at this, how this room is designed, though, it's not just like a boiler room. It doesn't not just there to be a function. The fact that there's so much detail in this work, and I think this is something that always resonates with the Ghibli films, and in particular the Miyazaki films, in that like you look at the details in this room and the fact that this room has been built for his purpose. They've essentially built a room around him so that he can efficiently run all the pumps and send through the water and handle the antiquated like messaging system they have, where they just send cards that just bound down from strings from the ceiling, and he can just do this all from his like one location while working with his many arms. And Even like when you have like the soot sprites and they she sparks a little mini protest in them. When they just like they all suddenly realize that, oh wait, we don't have to move the coal, she can move the coal for us. I love those little charming bits in it.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the boiler room, it's also another part of it that I really love is, you know, the wall of cabin of like drawers with herbs and stuff like that. And it's great because it reminds me of, I don't know if Japan is like that, but I know that in Hong Kong, when I used to go when I was young, like when you go to places like the more where they have to like do herbal medicine and they pick the actual herbs for you, it's also the same thing where you have like a wall of herbs, and then they'll open like different drawers, and I think that that's so fun because it reminds me a lot of kind of like this kind of more traditional type of traditional medicine sort of concept.
Yeah, it's always been like interesting, like how much traditional things that are kept, they retain these elements of the old way of doing things, even though they're obviously in a more modern setting and stuff. It's just funny how certain things never change. As we move our way up through here, and we get to see like the matted dining rooms, and then we get to see the actual like bathhouse, and just the way that each of these rooms is introduced when we're going up in the elevator, and we're seeing these rooms in the same way that in the same time she's seen them, and at this point she's been given a new name. She's now Sen. And even like there'd be like rooms where we don't see, and we just see like silhouettes through like the rice paper walls and stuff, and it's just you just kind of like want to lose yourself in this location. It's sort of like one of those locations like, I just wish I could visit this. Like, just make the whole film about the bathhouse. I don't need to see anything else. Just have her work at the bathhouse and be that the whole film. And the fact that you have this wonderful sequence with No Face turning up and sparking this big riot as he's able to like produce gold everywhere, and then you got the stink spirit who like turns up and he's just like this big slimy mass, and you see them on the bridge like with the lights trying to stop him and stuff from coming in. It's and even when we go up to like the top of the bathhouse, and then we see like Baba's office, which is she shares with her giant baby child Bo, who's probably one of the most creepiest things in the Ghibli world. I don't know who is responsible for designing Bo, but it's super creepy, and in many ways reminds me of Akira.
You know, I have a very different feeling about it, because one, it's such a contrast. That's why I really like Bo as a character. Is what, as a giant baby, he's kind of creepy and kind of whatever, and very like, you know, he's very spoiled. Basically, he gets everything he wants. He's, you know, he knows, you know, he cries all the time, and it's like all these big over the top type of moments. You know, I mean, I guess it's a baby, a normal baby, but something that I have a very fond memory of right now, experience at this very moment as we're recording this.
But your baby doesn't threaten to break your arm.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is like still creepy.
But it's very over the top because he's kind of, I don't know, maybe he's like a magical baby. I don't know what that is. But at the same time, but when you see him being changed, like when he gets transformed by Yubaba's sister, what is it, Zeniba? Yeah. Then he turns into this cute little mouse. And then it's such a contrast because now all of a sudden he's this tiny little mouse, and then for one part he's still, you know, he still has that kind of like, oh, his type of like personality, right? But as the thing goes along, you really see like the little mouse bonding with everything else, and oh my god, I can't. This film, I think the cutest thing is Bo in the little fat mouse form with the little bird carrying him around. It is the cutest thing in the world.
There is an interesting fan theory that relates to the bathhouse as well, is that if you look at the writing above the entrance to the bathhouse, it translates to you, meaning hot water, and obviously this is something you'd expect to see, yet considering the style of the building is, which is from the Edo period, and in this period, bathhouses were essentially brothels. The women there were known as or hot water women. And it just sort of like makes the idea sort of like, is Sen working in a brothel? It would also play into like the fact that, Chihiro has her name changed to Sen, as it basically a lot of prostitutes change their name to protect their real identities, and their real identities will be signed over to their madam. So I just obviously wonder there's anything in that. I mean, obviously it's a lot creepy when you consider, I mean, she's a 10-year-old child, so don't think too much into this, but I just, as I said, I just wondered, was Miyazaki like subtly getting past, especially here in the West, where such things can like slip by us unnoticed, that Sen was actually working in a brothel all this time, but
I'm sure it's not. I think it's more of like a rite of passage, like maybe like a coming of age sort of thing, where when she was there, all of a sudden she's not a child anymore. Over there, she needs to have a purpose. She needs to work in order to maintain her status and her identity there before she's able to, find what she needs in order to escape, right?
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, it ties back into the Pinocchio thing. I mean, the parents are turned into, as I mentioned, we said already, the parents are turned into pigs the same way the boys are turned into donkeys at Pleasure Island. And this is all about a girl trying to become a real girl again. So I'm just trying to latch onto the fact that it's Pinocchio here. So, but yeah, I mean, but certainly once we leave the bathhouse, though, I do find that the film just it's got many stories. It doesn't lose any of its charm, but I just failed to find myself as engaged as I was during like that first half where the bathhouse, and I think it's just because it's such a strong location that, like, when we're on the railway, and as much as I enjoy this group of characters that we're now with, including the recently transformed baby, which it's still funny no matter how many times I see it, just seeing that giant tubby mouse being carried by the bird. And it has to like constantly flap its wings really hard to move itself up and down. So, but no, the sequence. I mean, you got loads of those iconic scene shots of them on the train, and it just seems like a much more subdued journey than the one we were on before, which was sort of like her trying to adapt to this world that she could potentially be stuck in, and then we're sort of on this road trip to find Yubaba's.
I get what you're saying, but then I mean, at least I remember looking at the time markers when we were going through the sequences to see how the film was like balanced, because I also really like the bathhouse part. I think that's also one of its strongest elements, mostly because there's just so much to see and so much to do, and everything in the bathhouse. There's like all these different characters who are incredibly hilarious. And then you have like some really big moments. But I mean, when you think about her leaving, it's really the ending moments. You're at the final quarter of the film at that point. And it I guess maybe it's just a change of pace, because the film is, I mean it's like almost 2 hours. It's like over 2 hours.
It is. It's surprisingly long, but it doesn't feel as long as some of the other films.
Maybe it's just because there's a lot going on. I mean, I do agree that if they would have had enough content to just focus on the bathhouse, with like just the different people coming in and her finding her escape, but at the same time, like, this is also part of the journey of the escape, because obviously they created that twin sister element for Yubaba, and then you have this other kind of like, it's kind of maybe like a good and evil thing, like one's a good sister and one's a bad sister, but which is which type of thing, and you kind of get pulled into that because, obviously the way that Zeniba shows up feels a little bit like she has bad intentions, but it doesn't feel that way when you finally meet her, because she starts kind of like laying out the things, and I don't know. I mean, sometimes the witches in these things, they feel threatening, but then when certain things happen, you kind of have this like contrast. Like when you look at Yubaba, you can think about it the sense that, you know, obviously she's such a colorful character because one, you see her flying in the skies disguised as like a bird, but at the same time you also have her you also have her there being this matriarchy to this entire bathhouse. But when she's faced with Bo, she turns into, you know, like a doting mother, who's basically spoiling her child and trying to fulfill his every want and desire. And there's so many different sides of the character that even though Yubaba is not like a main character, I would argue, she's still so fascinating to watch. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why I'm saying that, you know, the bathhouse is such a fascinating place, because every single person that's there has such a strong presence. Like, there's so many sides to those characters, even when you look at Kamaji and all that stuff, and all those different people, right?
Yeah, and with the character, with character Yubaba, she's got such an interesting design, because she's got a head. And this sort of like very sort of traditional sort of witchy body, and even when you look at her character, there's a scene where she gets covered in debris and she's got like bits of wood in her hair and stuff, and and you like look at her office and stuff, and they give all these like really fun little quirky witch things, such as the fact she has a phone that's a talking skull, and the mouth moves on it as it she takes gold, which again still makes me laugh. But there's something about this character, you get the feeling that while she's obviously very powerful and stuff, she doesn't sort of like play too much into the evil witch sort of trope, really, even though she's supposed to be like the threat of this character. She's kind of like the lady in Princess Mononoke, like the head of Irontown. She's very focused on running her business and stuff, so she has sort of like a fairness to her, but at the same time it's sort of like a manipulative side as well. Because how do you describe her level of evil, really? Because she's somewhere, she's not, as I said, for myself, she doesn't feel like completely evil. She's just, at the same time, she's more of a trickster, kind of like Loki.
Yeah, like you know, she's not. I think, you know, this is what makes the film feel like it's for kids, because even though there are some, you know, a little bit more, I guess, scarier moments, like with you know the with that sort of thing, they never really go full out on the darkness. And that's something that I feel is a little different for Miyazaki, because, you know, as we've looked at the previous films, there's a certain darkness to a lot of them. You know, barring maybe like Totoro or something, like Totoro or whatever. Like, most of them have a certain darkness to them. A certain, you know, different side, maybe a bit of a depth, like, of you know, something that's maybe evil, maybe, some type of, I don't know what you call it, but there's something a little bit more. But rarely does he have a film where it doesn't have that darkness to it as much. But I don't know. I mean, I you know, I don't know.
Talked about really is the character No Face, who's the ghost with the mask for a face, who's gold, and then is intoxicated by the atmosphere of the bathhouse and turns into this huge monster that suddenly starts eating everyone. I always found like such a bizarre character, the fact that you've got this character who like becomes corrupted and becomes this monstrous sort of presence in the house, yet at the same time has this ability to sort of play off I couldn't tell whether it was sort of like playing off the greed of other characters by being able to produce gold, or whether it's just sort of as a way to make friends with people by giving them gold, like this was its way of trying to make friends with people, and unfortunately, due to the setup of the bathhouse, ends up becoming turning into this monstrous presence.
He plays into, I think his main thing is that he's lonely and he wants somewhere, like a place where he belongs, some companionship and whatnot. And I think that's where the main argument is, that, you know, the moment that Sen invites him into the bathhouse, that's when things kind of that's when he kind of connects himself to her, and he wants to appeal to her. I don't know if it's to pay her back or to make friends with her. And as he constantly gets rejected from Sen, he feels this, I don't know, this kind of anger that kind of strikes him, and he starts, you know, lashing out, and he starts, you know, doing all these things. But in the end, he is trying to get her attention, which essentially is one of the things, you know, that, you know, obviously he eventually finds a spot where he needs to be, and that's a great ending for him, overall.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be something about the spirits in the spirit world, that a lot of them have got a sort of, you know, they get bratty and they're spoilt, and they're sort of struggling, even though you would think that being spirits, that, you know, they would have perhaps got a better grasp on things by now.
But, you know, I actually think when I look at, as we're talking about this, I'm starting to see certain elements, like every single character kind of reflects a little bit about someone in their childhood. So you have, like, say, No Face is, you know, when I was young,
yeah,
I knew someone who was like that also, who would kind of try to buy their friends. You know, kind of like appeal to their many wants and desires, so that because of their capability, or because if they have more money or more, you know, whatever, that they're able to do these things in order to keep their friendships, or you think that this is a good way to keep a true friendship. And then you also have people who are helping you along the way, who, you know, like Haku is there, and he's more of, you know, obviously he plays partly into like kind of like a guardian spirit, or like you know, that sort of thing. And then you have people who are like, you know, a baby, where you have Bo, where you see a baby version of, you know, like the over exaggerated version of how a baby is, where they want everything in this moment. And, you know, I think a lot of kids are like that too, probably, where, you know, or, you know,
yeah, of course,
there's no sense, you know, like when you want something now. And that's because, you know, babies don't know, you know, patience, and they don't know all these things. These things all need to be learned. And in that sense, you know, like, Sen kind of falls somewhere in there, because she's also a child coming into here. So she has this fear and whatnot, and she goes through this coming of age in the process, where she gains responsibility, and she realizes that, you know, from the start, where she's complaining about moving and moping over, you know, not being with her friends anymore, and, you know, moping over the fact that, oh, I finally got a bouquet, and then now I have to, and it's because I'm moving away, and all that stuff. And then till the end, where she's content with and grateful for the fact, simply because she got back her parents.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think her journey is, with her finding her own level of maturity and self. A lot of the characters who follow her also find what it is that's missing from them. I mean, obviously, No Face is a sense of belonging, and as we said with her already, that she discovers this sort of like who she really is as a result of this journey, this sort of like being thrust into adulthood.
And even if you look at Bo, when he comes back from his journey and he turns back into his human form, he ends up being a much more reasonable child.
It's true.
You know, he knows right from wrong, and he defends her in that sense, where he's like, okay, well, Mom, you got to stop doing this, you know?
Yeah, and it's so weird when you think of these characters. These characters are obviously spirits, so is Bo kept as a baby because of Yubaba? I mean, this is why I'm trying to think. Did he got this ability to grow other than mentally, or is he always going to stay in the same form? So he's very similar.
But I don't know. I don't know if it's meant to be analyzed that deep. Maybe just the fact that all these characters have this switch, right? This progress from one part to the next, where either it's how they accept her, or how they view her because she's human, or whether it's their process of from one point A to point B of maturity. I feel like that's the main progress. Like, all these characters have their own development, and for a 2-hour film to be able to carry this out and give you some pretty memorable characters, I think is one of the reasons that I really like Spirited Away a lot.
Of course. When it obviously comes to Miyazaki's sort of style here, we've obviously seen that he's able to do the fantasy and do things like Totoro and Spirited Away, and he's also been able to do like more sort of adventure pieces, should we say, things like Castle in the Sky, Princess Mononoke. With this film, I mean, obviously he's coming off Mononoke, which was 97, I want to say, at which point he was all set to take the first of his many proposed retirements, as he was planning to open the Ghibli Museum and was just ready to be done with directing animation. And he then obviously, there's some changes in the studio, a couple of people pass on, and he realizes that that he needs to step up and sort of fill the void by coming back and making this film, obviously to great critical acclaim and to win the Oscar. So would you prefer to see Miyazaki making like more sort of like fantastical romps like this and Totoro, or would you like to see him do more adventure sort of things? Which side you sort of lean towards? Because for myself, I tend to lean towards more just the adventure stories than the more fantastical. I always found those to be the more engrossing entries when we look at things like Porco Rosso and obviously my personal favourite, Princess Mononoke. Those were like the ones I always got the most out of, even though this film does give me a lot. I just don't, it just doesn't resonate with me the same way that those more adventure focused stories did.
I don't know, maybe fantastical, because I've always liked fantasy a lot.
So you like the more whimsy side?
Towards that, yeah, like the whimsy. I really like that sort of thing. But then when you think about a lot of the stuff, I don't know, I feel like there's always a nice balance to it. I mean, when we talk about the next film, I don't know if that's grounded. I guess that's also grounded in fantasy, because the next film is also one of my favorites. So... I don't know. I mean, Kiki is it considered grounded in fantasy, or is it grounded in adventure?
That is a thing. I would say with Kiki it is more fantastical, because all the things that she deals with are so minor. And now you reminded me of that, and I love Kiki's Living Service, so it just throws my whole theory out the window. So thank you for that, Kim.
Because that's the thing is, while we're talking about like a lot of these, I do like all of the movies to a certain degree, right? But I think the ones that rank the highest are mostly grounded in fantasy. But that's not weird for me, because I like things that are whimsy and weird, and that sort of thing is very, very where I am. And I'm just that type of person. It's like, even when I watch series, I like things that are, a little bit more odd and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think certainly when it came to like Spirited Away, it's very much ingrained in the public conscious now, and I think there's few films of the Ghibli catalogue that do that. I would say that My Name with Totoro is certainly the other sort of standout one, and the others we may see elements of, and the fact that when you watch the Simpsons episode Married to the Blob, and you got Homer going on a Ghibli-esque fantastical journey when he drinks snake wine, and you see like the residents of Springfield as Ghibli characters, and you got like the Quickie Mart, but it's still like Howl's Moving Castle, and it's like it just really shows the impact that Spirited Away really had on animation fans, and it just really sort of everything that sort of like followed. I mean, it opened up anime to being more than just the usual sort of action and horror genres that we've grown so accustomed to seeing. And you look at like now when we've got Netflix and Crunchyroll and Funimation, it's just like there is so many different types of anime out there. You've got romantic anime, you've got cute boys making out anime, or yaoi. You've got all these many different sorts of anime that we never used to have before, and I think a lot of that can be traced back to Spirited Away having the impact that it did, and just sort of like making us up and realize, anime is a lot more than we thought it was. So
yeah, but I mean, even Spirited Away, I always like to refer it to the fact that, I feel like it was a big influence, even though I've never really looked up whether it was an influence. But I mean, to one of our favorite games, even like Little Nightmares, it's, obviously when we play Little Nightmares, we did talk about it being very comparable to Spirited Away, and in the sense that, you have this same type of enchanted space. And, you have guests coming in, and it's not a bathhouse, but it is very relatable and very different in many different scenes.
Yeah, it's a dining hall, isn't it? So
yeah, and actually, we also, well, that episode hasn't gone out yet, but there is another game that was influenced by Spirited Away, called Spiritfarer, which we have reviewed, but it's obviously in
it'll be out by the time this comes out, so.
Games are also, different types of animations. Like, I mean, games in itself is a certain type of animation as well. So
it's true.
So yeah, so it's also, there's also this type of influence in it, and I think Spirited Away has grown to be so, it's so much bigger than I expected it to be, I guess. And I guess winning that Academy Award really did give Studio Ghibli such a nice space, even though, for us who have been, involved in a lot of Asian cinema and that sort of thing, it's been exposed to us probably earlier than 2001. But I really do appreciate the fact that Spirited Away came to be such a hit that a lot of people are able to appreciate Ghibli for what they are. Hopefully people appreciate Ghibli for what it is and not just, Miyazaki.
Oh yeah, you had so many critics in the West going, "Oh, Miyazaki's like the Disney of Japan," and he was like, "No, I'm not. I make animated films, but Disney makes children's films." He took great offense to that, and I think if you win an Oscar, it legitimizes the genre. Like, when you look at like superhero movies, were not a legitimate genre until Dark Knight wins an Oscar. Wuxia movies, not a legitimate art form until Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon wins the Oscar. And then when Spirited Away wins the Oscar for animated feature, and suddenly, animated films are now, and anime in particular, is now a legitimate genre. So I think while we obviously may question who wins what at the Oscars, I mean, the fact that there's still many mistakes made by the Oscar. I mean, do we really think that Moonlight is a better movie than La La Land? No, of course it's not. But by the certain times that by certain films winning the Oscars, it legitimizes those genres. And then we obviously saw in the wake of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, we saw an influx of martial arts cinema. We saw Zhang Zimu continue his trilogy with House of the Flying Daggers and Curse of the Golden Flower, and just give us this whole show audiences you can do martial arts films, but you can also do them with an art house sort of leaning to them as well. So it was and as I said, I think that Spirited Away in that respect we owe so much to it, even though we probably have forgotten that now, because it was back in 2001, and like the giant baby, we just become really spoilt by getting all we wanted now. That's the thing. The baby now represents us as anime fans. We get everything we want. We don't appreciate it anymore. So on that note, it brings us to the end of tonight's episode. Very random note. Thank you as always for listening. If you haven't done already, please do hit the like and subscribe button wherever you happen to listen to us. Let other people know about the show. You can also check out our full archive episodes at moviesandteapodcast@wordpress.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. So come say hi to us there. Let us know what your favorite Ghibli movies are. Kim, what are we looking at next?
We are going to Howl's Moving Castle next. 2004.
Fantastic. So the whimsy train continues with a walking castle and a fire sprite that threatens to burn your bacon. But that's all coming up on our next episode. But until then, thank you for listening. Thank you to my co-host Kim. And we'll be back next time to talk about Howl's Moving Castle. But until then, good night.